Welcome to session 1 of Podcast University. I am so excited that you're here. Thank you for joining me. I have titled this particular session, So You Want to Be a Podcaster. I'm going to share some things with you actually before we get started into kind of the meat and potatoes of today's session. And it's going to feel a little strange, okay? I'm going to kind of hit you upside the head with a frying pan a little bit. And it's not to discourage you. It's just to be open, transparent, and honest with you about your levels of potential success in podcasting. I feel like I owe that to you. I really am sharing what I'm getting ready to share with you to actually potentially save you from a lot of pain and discouragement and loss of money and a lot of other things that'll come with this. So what I actually have to share is this. There is a 99% chance that you are going to fail as a podcaster. And I know that that seems very harsh and that seems very unlikely to you at first. And I know that 99% is an awfully high number because you only have one more to go before you hit 100. But the math is actually very much there to establish this. It's been well proven over time. The statistics will all tell you that there is a 90% chance that you will not make it past episode 10. Of those 10% that actually make it past the 10th episode, 90% of those will not make it past episode 20. So that means between episode 1 and episode 20, there is a 99% failure rate. And there are a ton of reasons for that. We're going to get into a lot of those today. But ultimately, the biggest thing that I see is this. We live in a very instant gratification society. I wish I got paid $1 for every time I saw someone that said, I don't understand. I've put out 3 episodes or 5 episodes. Why do I not have these massive download numbers or statistics? And it's like, because you've put out 3 episodes. You know, everybody wants to win the lottery. Everybody wants to go viral. Everybody wants all this instant gratification. But unfortunately, like everything else in life, anything worth doing takes time, and you have to dedicate a lot of your heart, a lot of your time, and a lot of your energy into your craft and hone your craft in order to be successful. And podcasting is no different. I think the vast majority of people get in there and they want to have this instantaneous viral success because they have it in their heads. That's what's going to happen. And my friends, it just doesn't happen. Everybody wants to have Joe Rogan style numbers within the first 5 episodes. But what most people don't understand is Joe Rogan literally started his podcast in like 2009. So he's been at this for literally 15 years. So it took Joe Rogan 15 years to become Joe Rogan. And he already had a head start anyway because he was already famous before he ever started his podcast. So the likelihood is that you're not going to get a multi-million-dollar deal from Spotify. You're not going to have Joe Rogan style success in 5 episodes. We all know if you go dig into the statistics of it, you have a much, much, much higher likelihood of being struck by lightning than you do winning the lottery. And you probably have a much, much, much higher chance of winning the lottery than you do going viral after 5 episodes as a podcaster. It just doesn't happen. You know, yes, crazy stories and crazy things do happen, but I just want to temper the expectations now because I see so many podcasts and so many people that fall into the 99th percentile because they go into this with false expectations of grandeur and they think that they're going to be this viral sensation literally within a few weeks or even a few days. And my friends, it just does not happen. That is not going to happen to you. That is not going to be your story. You can find great success in podcasting, but again, like anything else, you're going to have to put in the time and the effort and the resources, money and other things in order to arrive at that success. The number one thing that will trump everything, however, is making great content. You're going to hear that repeated over and over and over throughout all these sessions. That is going to be what trumps everything. But I just want to start off there because, and I know that seems harsh, but I just want to set the expectations for you. I want you to be reasonable and realistic as far as what you're getting into. If you want to do this for fun, then you're going to enjoy all of this. It's not going to matter to you, all the things that we're going to talk about today. You know, you can just kind of take things at your own pace. However, the vast majority of us that get into podcasting, you know, we want to succeed. We want to grow our audience, right? We don't want to fail. We want to, you know, have success. Most things that we get involved with in life aren't so blasé that we just don't care. If you're going to invest the time into this and you're going to create something, especially in the creative world, you're going to create a podcast and you're going to create this platform for you to have your voice. you're going to want to succeed, right? And you're going to want to have people join you on that and listen to your show. So if you listen to this and you're started scratching your head and you were already kind of on the fence about it and you're like, yeah, I thought I could be a podcaster, but nah, after kind of hearing that kind of took the wind out of my sails. You know what? Enjoy listening to podcasts, enjoy being a guest on podcasts maybe, but being a podcast host is probably not for you. Now, if you're the other side and you're just doing this for fun, or you're the 1%, you're like, I know for a fact, this is my passion, my heart is in this, I know I'm going to be in that 1%, then let's go ahead and get started for the day. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, and before you can really do anything, is you have to figure out what your topic and your format and your theme is. All right. And there's a lot that goes into each of that. So we're going to kind of break it down and we're going to take it step by step. And so many people jump into things before they really think some of these things through. I know this seems kind of basic, but it's amazing to me how many people really put the cart before the horse because they're so excited. And they wind up falling into the 99th percentile because they didn't take some of these things into consideration. So I'm going to try to spare you that right now today. So the first thing is you need to figure out what kind of topic you're going to cover. And that seems really simple, and most people have an idea in mind. They have something that they're passionate about, something that they want to talk about. So most people already know what topic they want to cover. But one of the problems with that is they don't think about how saturated the market is with that particular topic. I cannot tell you, again, if I got paid $1 for every time I watched somebody that wanted to start a podcast based on some kind of trauma or their feelings. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody that's been through stuff that wants to start a podcast. You can find success doing that, but you're already going to be up against it because the market is so overly saturated with that type of theme that you're going to have a hard time finding success because your audience is already listening to 80 million other podcasts that are a lot further along in their creative process than you, and quite frankly are probably going to be better because you're just getting going and they have already honed their craft and figured out how to be successful. So you really need to think about that topic and if this is something that you want to do. Again, you can find success, but you're going to have to figure out what is going to set you apart, what is going to make you special, what is going to make you different than all those other podcasts. And that really brings us up to the next point, which is you have to find your niche. All right. Now, finding your niche will set you apart. But another thing that you need to be careful with that is if you get so pinpointed specific with your niche that you have no room to really make content because you're going to talk about in 5 shows and you're going to kind of really cover all the ground of that niche, you're going to really run into a problem. So it's this very delicate balance between finding your topic, finding your niche, and figuring out what makes you special. So a couple things to kind of consider on that front. The next thing you're going to want to talk about is what format are you going to use? And there's a lot of things that go into format that people don't think about. The first thing is, are you going to be just an audio podcast? Are you going to be a video podcast? Are you going to do both? For the Tinfoil Hat Club, we were audio up until about episode 30, 35 maybe, and then we switched over to a video format where we actually do audio and video. Our RSS feed is actually feeding both audio and video out to everybody out there. The minute you go to video, it is a whole nother monster. There's a lot of things that you need to consider. A lot more editing time, more software, more tools that you're going to have to be familiar with, and you're going to have to be much more tech savvy unless you're paying somebody to edit your podcast, which most of us starting off either don't have the funds to do that or want to do it ourselves to learn. So if you fall into that camp, it's just some things that you need to think about before you really get going. There is absolutely nothing wrong with starting off with audio and doing what we did and switching over to video later. There are some things that you can do to help make that process easier and some things that I'm going to teach you as you continue on in these sessions that I wish I would have known ahead of time. That would have saved me a little bit of headache and a little bit of heartache. But if you go to video, it's a whole nother animal. Now, I will tell you this. If I could start us over for the Tinfoil Hat Club, of course, now hindsight's always 20/20, which is the beautiful thing because you're going to take advantage of all of my hindsight, of all the things that I've learned over time that I wish I would have known when I got started like you. And that's this. I would have started us off with video from the get-go. I'm much wiser now. I have better grasp of what tools are out there available to us to make that easier and make life easier on that front. But by all means, if you're not super comfortable with technology and you want to do this and your heart's really in it and you're willing to learn, just start off with audio and you can build video into the equation later. Video is very much a growing medium. There's a ton of growth in video, and I do think that eventually video could potentially overtake audio podcast as the desired format for podcasting. I don't think that it's going to put audio out of business. That's not what I'm saying, but it's growing very rapidly, and I could see that potentially being the more dominant format. Video is growing rapidly. There's a lot of places that some people don't even know that you can get video podcasts. If you go on Apple, if you've experimented at all, you can actually find video podcasts on Apple. The Tinfoil Hat Club, we are on Apple, and you can watch all of our latest episodes since we moved over to the video format. Most people are familiar with Spotify because of Joe Rogan and the Rogan Effect. They know that they offer video, and there are a few other places that are here and there where you can get video podcasts. A lot of people don't know that there are audio-only podcasts on YouTube along with video podcasts. Google actually shut down Google Podcasts, and they pushed everybody over to YouTube Music. And so you can actually put your audio-only podcast on YouTube, and YouTube will do some things to help put it up since it's a video-only format. And that's something that we can cover later in another episode. But something to consider whether or not you want to do audio, video, or you want to do both. The other thing that you need to think about is it just going to be you? Is there going to be a co-host? Are you co-hosting with one person or multiple people? Are you planning on having guests? Obviously, if it's just you, that makes things a little simpler, but it also makes it a little bit from a logistical perspective, but it makes it more challenging from the perspective of what are you going to do in order to keep your audience engaged and entertained for the length of your show. So you're going to really have to be more mindful about some of that stuff and think it out. Another thing to consider is if you have a co-host, you've got some more technology that you're going to have to get involved because now you've got another person that needs to be recorded as well, not just you. And you also have another person to think about from a scheduling perspective. Can they do this on a consistent basis? So your heart may be in this 150% and you want to make this successful and you want to succeed. You really need to make sure if you're taking a co-pilot along this journey with you that they are in the same boat and they want to make this succeed no matter what. And then finally, guests. If you're planning on having guests on your show, how you handle that and what you do is going to dictate what you need to do from a technological perspective. And there's a lot of things that go into that. So something to consider, again, before you get going. And that really takes us to the next thing is, are you planning on recording all this in person, like in studio? Or are you going to be remote only podcast? If you're interviewing people or you have a co-host, are you guys going to be in the same studio? Or are you going to do this remotely? When you have guests, are you going to have them in studio? Or are you going to have them remotely? Or are you going to run with a hybrid format where you have some in studio and some remotely? On the Tinfoil Hat Club, we actually run with a hybrid format sometimes. My co-host Ben and I, we actually are in studio anytime that we record, and it's just the two of us. Both of us are physically here in this studio and we record. But then sometimes we have guests on, and we've had people that have been in studio, but sometimes we have guests that are actually going to be remote. And so how you handle that is very challenging sometimes on the technological standpoint. Honestly, hybrid recording is something that we are still learning on the technology front how to handle really well in the podcasting world. There's really not a bunch of great software out there now that handles it to the level that it needs to be handled. And I'm sure over time it will get better, but you need to kind of be tech savvy if you're going to do that and how to work around some of those tech challenges. It can be done. We are currently doing it. But again, you're going to really need to be a little bit more tech savvy in order to figure out how to handle that. Another thing you're going to need to ask yourself is how long are your episodes going to be? That seems like a simple question, but again, really important one. And for a lot of different reasons, everything has its pros and cons. Is your episode, are you planning on being 30 minutes or less? Are you going to do like 10, 15, maybe more frequently? Are you going to be in that 30 to 60 minute window? Or are you going to be like us in the Tinfoil Hat Club? We actually typically run about an hour and a half on our episodes. Joe Rogan, if you look at Joe, he's actually got some that are 2.5, even 3 hours long, I think, in cases. So you can find great success in each of these. However, one thing that you're going to run into, no matter who you are, whether you're Joe Rogan or Joe Schmo, it doesn't make any difference. You are going to see this in your statistics, and I call it the 30-minute fade. So after 30 minutes, when you look at your statistics on your podcast, you're going to see a drop-off after that time in your listenership. And it happens to every single one of us out there that has a show longer than 30 minutes. And I'm not saying that you should create a show that's less than 30 minutes, but if you create a show that's longer than 30 minutes, this is just something I want you to be prepared for, and because you're going to see it. And I love to ask people why they think that this happens. And I love to listen to them come up with reasons why they think it happens. And they go very psychological, and they think attention span, and I hear all kinds of things. And my friends, it's much more simplistic than that. It's a very logistical answer. That is how long the average commute is in this country. So when people are going to work, they typically average about a 30-minute commute, 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back. So if we kind of plug our format into that, and we're an hour and a half show, that means that somebody's literally going to have to listen to our show for 30 minutes and then get back in the car and listen for 30 minutes more, and then get in the next day if they don't finish it when they get to work or get home, and listen for 30 more minutes. So the longer your shows are, typically it is a little bit more challenging to retain your audience. And I know I said this in the beginning, and I'm going to repeat it again, and I'm going to repeat it several more times as we continue forward on this journey together. What matters most and more than anything is the quality of your content. If your content is good, people will listen to you. So just keep that in mind. Next question is going to be, what will your release format be? And what I mean by that is this: are you going to release on a monthly basis? Are you going to release kind of on a bi-weekly basis, a weekly basis, a daily basis, some kind of hybrid in the middle there? There are tons of podcasts out there, literally 5 million of them, that are currently having success and covering all the gamut out there that you can imagine. However, I will tell you this, okay? The most common format out there probably is a weekly podcast. That's what, again, we do on the Tinfoil Hat Club. We release weekly. If you are planning on doing a monthly podcast, I would really encourage you to think about, maybe if you're doing this for fun, then go ahead. But if you're thinking about this and you want to grow your audience, I'm going to really encourage you to think about doing more frequently than that. It's very, very difficult in this instant gratification, short attention span society that we live in, where everything is TikTok in 60 seconds, for you to grow an audience when they can only hear your voice once a month. Even if you're doing a really long podcast, it is going to be extremely difficult for people to go a month before they hear you again to get an audience built. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's doing a monthly format that is having success because it covers the gamut. But the likelihood is very, very, very low if you go that long that you're going to build any kind of audience whatsoever. I would personally encourage you not to go any more than every other week, the bi-weekly format. And I would really probably encourage you to do at least a weekly format, if not more frequently than that. But ultimately, what matters is you need to do what fits best for you, and something that is sustainable for you. Because one of the other reasons why people fail and they wind up in the 99th percentile is something called pod fade. And what pod fade is people come out of the gate and they're really, really excited, right? And they're really hot, and this is a new venture, and they're excited, and they're in love, and they're going to do really good on the podcast. And they put a ton of effort and time into it. They kind of went into this with rose-colored glasses on, and they didn't realize how much work was really involved to get very little return at first, because you're trying to build an audience, and they get burnt out very quickly. Sometimes they do this to themselves because they choose a daily format and they want to do like an hour episode a couple times a week. And that is a ton of editing work and time and marketing and everything that you have to do. I personally cannot imagine doing it more frequently than the week that we actually do. And it has taken us about 40 episodes before we really got into a space where we had some cushion and had some time built up before our next episode was coming out that we were editing. So once you can get to the point where you've got maybe some guests lined up and you've got multiple episodes recorded and edited and quote in the can that you can work on to kind of give yourself a multi-week cushion, you're going to have to put in some work. You're going to have to put in a lot of time and a lot of effort. And most people don't want to do that. They can't do that. They want that instant gratification, and they're not willing to put it in. I always tell people this: if you were opening a restaurant, right, and this is your baby and you've sunk a bunch of money into it, you're going to know ahead of time you're going to have to put in a lot of time in order to get that restaurant off the ground and be successful. Once you get it to that point, then you can dial it back a little bit and settle in and have a more reasonable time schedule. But you are going to have to put in the work and the effort in order to develop your craft, in order to get better, in order to market, in order to do all the things you're going to need to do in order to be successful. And then the last thing is, what is your theme going to be, right? And what I mean by that is your show name, your artwork, your theme, your banners, all these types of things. You're going to need to research and what does that look like and what is that going to be? And unfortunately, people make a lot of mistakes, even with their show name, and they don't do some research before they pick their show name and head off to the races. If there's somebody out there or a couple people out there that already have your show name, when your audience tries to go find you on the different platforms, they're going to find the other people first because they have more downloads than you. They're more successful than you. They're going to be upfront and people are going to have to dig in order to find you. So if you have somebody out there that already has your name or a couple people, you're already making things much more difficult for you to build an audience because people are going to have a hard time finding you. So something that you should really do is go on Spotify, go on Apple. Those are the two really largest out there, maybe Amazon, definitely YouTube, and take a look and see who already exists, if there is anybody that exists that has the name that you want to run with, and kind of adapt from there. The next thing that you really need to think about is what kind of theme, style, artwork that you want to go with, color scheme, and all this thing for your podcast. There's a ton of things that go into this. Again, we're going to cover this more in another episode later in a little bit more detail. But one of the things I'm going to tell you is make sure that you are either A, creating artwork yourself, and there's a ton of ways out there to do that. If you're not graphically inclined, you can always hire somebody using a company called Fiverr. Or various other places, or you can go on. There's a lot of AI generators right now that you can use that are pretty good. Or you can go get royalty-free images, but you need to make sure that you are getting royalty-free images or you're creating images from scratch. I cannot tell you, I've heard some horror stories about people who did not make sure that their images were royalty-free or their theme or something that they used in their show, and then they wind up having to change their artwork or they wind up having to change their music or something major to their podcast. And you can only imagine how crazy detrimental to their podcast that can be, having to do that. So just make sure that you're either creating it yourself or you're using royalty-free images. And the last thing I want to talk to you guys about today is this, be confident and get out there. Again, I wish I got paid $1 for how many people I see in the group forums and various places out there in the podcasting world that say things like, I'm getting ready to release my podcast, my first episode. I've been working on it for 6 months. And I think to myself, what on earth have you been working on for 6 months? Why is it taking you 6 months to release your podcast? And that really comes down to this. If you are the type of person that overthinks things and you really suffer from paralysis via analysis, you may want to rethink doing this. Because a lot of times you're doing that because you're very concerned about rejection and you're concerned about what people are going to say about your product, what they are going to think about your product that you put out there, your show that you put out there, and your creative thing that you put out there. And you're afraid of getting hurt. You're afraid of having nasty things said to you. And I'm going to tell you this. You're either going to have to get through that and push through that, or you are going to fall in the 99th percentile. It is going to happen. You're going to have to thicken your skin, and you're just going to have to put yourself out there and be willing to take whatever comes your way. Am I encouraging you to rush and put out subpar episodes and subpar show? Of course, I'm not doing that. Nobody wants to listen to dog crap. I'm not encouraging you to put dog crap out there. But what I am telling you is this, is you have to get off of the chair and you have to be willing to put yourself out there and take what comes your way. You are not going to be the best you ever were the first time out. Nobody was Mozart. Nobody was Beethoven, even Mozart and Beethoven the first time they sat down at the piano. Jimi Hendrix, the first time he picked up the guitar, wasn't Jimi Hendrix that he was at the end. Stevie Ray Vaughan, the first time he picked up a guitar, wasn't Stevie Ray Vaughan that he was at the end. And that's because they had, like anybody else, they had to hone their craft. They had to get better. And it is going to be a while before you really do that. This is a constant learning and evolving process, and you are going to need to get feedback. Okay. You're going to need to put yourself out there, solicit feedback, and be willing to have thick skin and take the hits. I'm going to tell you this too. Anytime you put something creative out there and anytime you experience the least little bit of success, and this is going to be anybody that's ever done this has experienced this, you are going to get people that want to just tear you down and they want to spit at you and they want to just put vitriol your way. The quickest way to find out and experience this is to put something on YouTube and experience a little bit of success. The nasties will come out of the woodwork and they will send you their little nasty grams to tear you down and complain about everything under the sun. And you know what? You got to be willing to just listen to that and let it roll off your shoulder, because with those people, there are also a ton of people that will appreciate what you're doing and will give you good, solid feedback. And don't even engage with those people, okay? Like when we get somebody on YouTube, as an example, that wants to just spit at us and be nasty, I don't do anything. I don't acknowledge their existence. I don't thumbs up. I don't thumbs down. I don't answer them. The only time that I even have answered at all is if they were really nasty towards one of our guests. I'll stand up for the guest all day long, but I'm not going to go out of my way to acknowledge this person after I do. I say my piece and then I'm done, and I don't listen to anything else they have to say, because most of these people are just nasty and they got a bunch of anger in their heart and they just want to spit at you. So be prepared. You are going to experience it if you stay in the game long enough and you start to experience success. But you have to make sure that you're getting on the field, and to have success, you got to get in the game, right? So make sure you're not falling victim to the 99th percentile, because you are one of those folks that is overthinking everything under the sun. All right. Well, with that, I really appreciate you guys listening to session 1, and I have so much more great content for you in these other sessions. If you've purchased all of them ahead of time, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. If you are taking them as you go, that's fantastic too. However you choose to do this, I am there for you. I'm going to help you out. So I will catch you on the next session. Take care.